the women and children to bed and go looking for dinner. John Rothstein here on Inside College Basketball Now. I want to remind you to subscribe to Inside College Basketball Now on both Apple and Spotify. We want to be your Bible for the college basketball season and beyond. We are the only college basketball podcast coming to you 52 weeks out of the calendar year. Also want to remind you to like and subscribe to Inside College Basketball Now on YouTube. We want to get up to 400 likes for this show, and also want to offer a special programming reminder that Inside College Basketball Now will be bringing you live shows throughout the 25-26 college basketball season each and every Monday and Thursday at 1 o'clock Eastern. And if you can't be with us for those live shows, join us on your commute home or during your early morning workout on Apple or Spotify. We need an army with us for each and every show here on Inside College Basketball Now, and we need you to be all you can be. And in addition to those two live shows on Mondays and Thursdays each and every week, and there will be more as we inch closer and closer to Selection Sunday, Inside College Basketball Now will be bringing you exclusive interviews with some of the biggest and best names in the sport. Now, with all that said, I want to address something at the start of the show. And people who know me, people who are in my life, know that before I found my love and reverence for college basketball, nothing made me more excited as a young kid than the world of professional wrestling. And 30 years ago, one of the greatest storylines that ever existed in professional wrestling happened in the now defunct WCW, when the New World Order invaded WCW and tried to really turn wrestling on its head. And it tried to get all sorts of new members. And one of the members that it tried to add was Sting, who was a franchise member of WCW. And he took the mic when this courtship started, and he said, the only thing that's for sure right now is that nothing is for sure. And that right now is the best way to sum up what is going on with the NCAA. I know earlier this week, Alabama got Charles Bediako back in the program, who's been gone from Alabama's program and has been playing in the G League over the last couple of years. I know that we continue to have all sorts of issues with eligibility rules that stems from one injunction a couple of years ago in a West Virginia courtroom when the NCAA was trying to implement a system where two-time transfers were very unlikely to play immediately if they transferred a second time. The only thing for sure right now with the NCAA, nothing's for sure. And as I said a couple of weeks ago when James Najee was ruled eligible to play for Baylor, as I said then, this is the important thing to remember, and this is the simple way to look at the situation. The on-court product in college basketball is as good or better than it's ever been in the sport since I've been doing this in the last 20 years. But everything leading up to the games is as bad as it's ever been in years. And everybody wants to spend time dissecting, digesting, trying to offer some perspective on what's going on right now in college sports. It's real simple. There are no rules. And that's the best way I can say it. And if you have no rules, there is nothing to enforce. It reminds me of Jurassic Park, 1993, Steven Spielberg, one of the great films of my generation, when the fences went out. And you know what happened when the fences went out. Anarchy followed. And now, let's get to three big things as it relates to college basketball. The first is UCLA finally made a dent. And I have been biting at the bit to get behind a microphone since late Tuesday night, because I can say without hesitation that UCLA's 69-67 win over Purdue on Tuesday night at Pauley Pavilion was the best college basketball game that I have seen this season. And great college basketball games have to feature all sorts of different things. There needs to be ties. There needs to be lead changes. There needs to be great pageantry, which you don't always get at Pauley Pavilion, but you saw Tuesday night at Pauley Pavilion. And you also had a performance by Donovan Dent that showed you why UCLA at the end of last season made Donovan Dent its number one priority when he went into the transfer portal out of New Mexico. And it reminded me of what Donovan Dent did a year ago when he was the Mountain West Player of the Year, when he was the epicenter of a team out of the Mountain West that went to the NCAA tournament and won a game in the round of 64 against Marquette. Donovan Dent last year at New Mexico had a 40-point game at VCU. And Donovan Dent went toe-to-toe with the best point guard in college basketball on Tuesday night, Purdue's Braden Smith, and didn't just hold his own. Donovan Dent outplayed Braden Smith. Donovan Dent went for 23, 13 assists, 3 turnovers, and multiple blocks. Donovan Dent showed why he is capable of being what he was last season at New Mexico, and that is the most electrifying player in college basketball today. And sometimes it takes a game like this to get somebody going. Donovan Dent, up until that game against Purdue, had moments of promise for UCLA. He had moments of being a major factor. You saw it a little bit when UCLA lost at Iowa on January 3rd in the second half of that game. But we had not seen yet this season Donovan Dent do what he did against Purdue. And it got me thinking about UCLA, who I had coming into the season as a top 10 team. I think they were ranked number 12 in the AP top 25 prior to the year. UCLA had been a bit of a disappointment. But Gino Auriemma told me a long time ago in an interview I was doing with him, there are no great coaches without great players. So if you're UCLA and you're coming into the season and you're looking at the backcourt that you've put together, if you're Mick Cronin, and you think you're having an All-American in Donovan Dent and a really good veteran in Sky Clark, you think obviously you're going to have one of the best backcourts in college basketball. Sky Clark has been out since January 3rd, but prior to that, he has lived up to the billing. He has been a great perimeter defender. He is shooting over 48% from three. UCLA needs that guy back. But the story is this. If Donovan Dent can be 60 to 75% of what he was against Purdue on Tuesday night, UCLA has the requisites to be a real team nationally. But part of the problem is this. Watching the game, the back, the forth, everything that happened in that game, I said to myself, there are 2 times that I have seen UCLA play with this type of energy. There are 2 times that I've seen this season UCLA play with that type of reckless abandon. One was the other night against Purdue, and the other was against Arizona in mid-November at Intuit Dome, where if you remember, UCLA had an 8-point lead over Arizona, the number 1 team in the country, with 7 minutes to play, and lost the game. And a big reason was because UCLA was soft as butter defensively. And I was in studio last Saturday on CBS when UCLA gave up 86 points to Ohio State and Columbus. And I said it without hesitation that this is unequivocally the worst defensive team of Mick Cronin's career. But I don't know what happened from the end of the Ohio State game to the start of the Purdue game. But UCLA, and there's major limitations still for the Bruins up front. Xavier Booker has holes in his game. We know that. But Xavier Booker was better against Purdue, 9 points, 4 rebounds, than he was really in any game the last month. UCLA, when it's engaged and when it can play with the type of energy it played with against Purdue, can be a factor in the Big Ten and a factor nationally. Because UCLA, again, without Sky Clark, has a win now over Purdue that when I was doing my bracket projection this morning that I will post tomorrow morning on X every single Friday at 9 a.m., it got the Bruins comfortably into the bracket. That's what a win like that does over a team like Purdue. It is something that will be a major chip that UCLA can take all the way to Selection Sunday. But the Purdue win for UCLA is not truly going to bear fruit if UCLA does not take care of business over its next couple of games. And look, Mick Cronin went off after the game in the press conference about UCLA's travel to start Big Ten play. Games at Iowa and Wisconsin, a home game against Maryland, games at Penn State and Ohio State, and then back to play Purdue across the country. UCLA has a stretch now, and the Bruins are 13-6 overall, where it will play its next 5 games in the Pacific time zone. 4 of them are at Pauley Pavilion. Northwestern, who beat USC last night at the Galen Center, will be next to visit UCLA on Saturday. Then UCLA next week will go to Oregon, who again is playing without Jackson Shellstad and Nate Biddle. Then UCLA comes home for 3 straight home games: Indiana, Rutgers, and Washington. As Tim Robbins said, as Andy Dufresne in The Shawshank Redemption circa 1994, get busy living or get busy dying. The second big thing I want to get to involves one of the teams and the programs I was just talking about, and that's the Arizona Wildcats, who are seeking their first Final Four appearance since 2001, when Arizona lost in the national championship game to Duke. You know, it's not talked about that much because Arizona is always viewed as one of the best programs in college basketball. But Arizona has only been to 4 Final Fours, and all of those Final Fours have happened under Lute Olson. 1988, 1994, the national championship run in 1997, and then 2001, the last time Arizona was in the Final Four. Arizona, though, is surging right now again like a team that can break that spell. Now, Arizona has been deep in the NCAA tournament many other times since 2001. Sean Miller, who is now the coach at Texas, took Arizona to the Final 8, the Elite 8, 3 separate times. 2011, lost to eventual national champion UConn. Jamel Horn had a chance to win that game for Arizona. He missed a 3. 2014, lost on the last possession to Wisconsin. 2015, lost to Wisconsin in a game where the Badgers put on an unbelievable shooting display. Tommy Lloyd has Arizona in a position to get back to that point. But Arizona, we have to remember, under Tommy Lloyd, has not been past the Sweet 16 of the NCAA tournament. That is a barrier that this team is going to have to get through and should have an opportunity to do so if things continue. But I want to point this out. Arizona might be 19-0, but Arizona is also going to have to encounter landmine after landmine in the Big 12 the rest of the season. Arizona has 12 regular season games remaining. These are all games on the docket for the Wildcats before they get to the Big 12 tournament. 2 games against BYU, 2 games against Kansas, a road trip to Houston, a home game against Texas Tech, and a home game against Iowa State. That's 7 games against teams that are good enough to get to the Final Four, in my opinion. That is a tough opportunity for Arizona to navigate in terms of being in a situation where it can cleanly get to Selection Sunday as the number 1 overall seed. But that's what Arizona's playing for right now. Because if you are Tommy Lloyd, and if you are an Arizona basketball fan, you know as well as I do that nobody, and I mean nobody, travels on the West Coast like Arizona fans. So if Arizona holds serve, and I have Arizona right now as the number 1 overall seed in the NCAA tournament, Arizona would start at Viejas Arena in San Diego, and then if it advanced there, San Jose for the Sweet 16 and the Elite 8. But this is only January. But the thing I'm thinking, watching Arizona last night against Cincinnati, and it turned out to be a lopsided win for the Wildcats in Tucson, as it usually is, and Arizona will next host West Virginia in Tucson Saturday afternoon on CBS. Arizona is going to be an extremely difficult team to prepare for, especially on a 2-day turnaround in the NCAA tournament, because this is, in my opinion, as balanced a team that we have seen for a number 1 seed. As of today, 7 different players on Arizona average between 8.7 points per game and 14.6 points per game. The guy that averages 8.7 points per game, Anthony Del Orso, has come off the bench twice this season and helped Arizona win major games away from home. One was a couple of weeks ago at TCU, and another was against UCLA in November when he came off the bench to have 20. Del Orso and Toby Awaka are essentially 6 and 7 starters for Arizona. They essentially have 7 starters. And speaking of Toby Awaka, I have been outspoken about this for years, but I think we should definitely implement sooner rather than later a National Six-Man of the Year award in college basketball. It is something I have felt passionately about for years. It is something that obviously has not been put into fruition yet. But I think if you're looking and evaluating right now at who the best six-man in college basketball is, unequivocally to me, it's Toby Awaka. And he's one part of that troika up front for the Wildcats, Koa Pete and Mo Krivich, the other two guys, that give Arizona as formidable a front line as there is in the sport. But looking at the balance now, if you are the opponent, you're looking at a team that has so many ways to beat you. One night it could be Braden Burris. One night it could be Koa Pete, as we saw on opening night in Las Vegas against Florida. Another night, it could obviously be Mo Krivich or Braden Burris. Ivan Karchenkov has had moments where he can make big shots. This is as balanced a team that we have seen in a long time in terms of a team that is projected to be a number one seed in the NCAA tournament. Now, talking about one seeds in the NCAA tournament, I now am done talking about Nebraska as a team that's a feel-good story and a Cinderella story, and this is like St. Joe's in 2004. No, this isn't, the little engine that could anymore. This is a team in Nebraska that, as of today, I would have as a number one seed in the NCAA tournament. And when I sat here a couple of months ago and I talked about the notion that if Nebraska wins an NCAA tournament game for the first time ever in 2026, I'm going to fly to Lincoln. I'm going to put my credit card down in a bar for 1 hour, and I'm going to throw the fans a happy hour. I thought that Nebraska had a chance to win a game in the NCAA tournament. I did. I did not think that Nebraska would be a one seed potentially in the NCAA tournament. But here are the facts. Nebraska, compared to other teams in the Big Ten that it would be competing with for a potential number one seed in the Midwest region, has better wins right now in conference than Nebraska and Purdue and Michigan. Michigan, obviously, metrics-wise, boosted everything by the dominance and the margin of victory. Purdue also got big wins in the non-conference at Alabama and then against Texas Tech, in the Cayman Islands or in the Bahamas. But with that said, Nebraska in conference play has a win over Michigan State at home, has also a road win at Illinois, and also has a dominant win early in Big Ten play over Wisconsin, which is amplified because Wisconsin went on the road and beat Michigan. Also, some news out of Nebraska just before we got on the air. Fred Hoiberg texted me and told me that Braden Frager, who left last night's game against Washington with an ankle injury, has been diagnosed with a sprained ankle and is day-to-day. This is obviously great news for the Huskers, who need Frager as a piece in reserve off the bench. He's averaging in double figures. This was a big-time factor for Nebraska a couple of weeks ago on the road at Indiana. So Braden Frager is day-to-day. That's per Fred Hoiberg. That's great news for the Huskers, who, again, as of today, I have as a number one seed in the NCAA tournament. You can see the rest of my bracket on Friday on Twitter at 9 a.m. And we will continue to talk more bracket projections and all that good stuff as we get closer and closer to Selection Sunday, which everybody knows is just 7 weeks from Sunday. It's going to be here like that. But here's another thing I want to piggyback off of. One of the reasons why I am not getting too involved in the Miami, Ohio, or St. Louis, or George Mason at-large talk to the NCAA tournament, because there is so much basketball to play. And those schools who are from non-power conferences have significantly more landmines than these teams in power conferences when we're talking about competing for at-large bids to the NCAA tournament. And this is something that is just a fact of life. If you are a bubble team in the Big Ten, like an Indiana, like an Ohio State, that is who a George Mason or a St. Louis or a Utah State or New Mexico has to beat out. And you have to remember that. You have to remember that a couple of years ago, Pat Kelsey, when he was at Charleston, led Charleston to an incredible run, beating major teams early on in non-conference play, and Charleston was not going to be in the NCAA tournament if it did not win the CAA tournament title game. I believe that was a 30-win team that wound up losing to San Diego State in the first round of the NCAA tournament in 2023. Now, with all that said, one year's bracket does not compete to another year's bracket, but I've said it before and I'll say it again. This is only January. The third big thing I want to get to revolves around another blue blood program, the North Carolina Tar Heels. And look, we've all been searching for answers for North Carolina since New Year's. We will learn a lot more about North Carolina after the Tar Heels go to Charlottesville on Saturday to take on Virginia. North Carolina has been mercurial during the month of January. North Carolina defensively has been obviously a major, major work in progress. The Tar Heels weathered the storm about their direction as a program under Hubert Davis by the way that they played in November and December. Won a game at home against Kansas, found a way to beat Ohio State in the CBS Sports Classic in a situation, obviously, where it lost a close game against Michigan State on Thanksgiving Day. Seth Trimble did not play in that game. But with all that said, North Carolina is in a situation now where it's entering the ultimate litmus test on Saturday at Virginia, who, if you've heard me here on this show, you know that I think that Virginia is a second weekend team in year one under Ryan Odom, and we had Ryan Odom on Inside College Basketball Now earlier in the week. Check it out on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. But I like what Hubert Davis is doing with his backcourt. Hubert Davis, a couple of games ago, opted to move Derek Dixon into the starting lineup and bring Kyan Evans off the bench. Last night against Notre Dame, Hubert Davis also put Jaden Young into the starting lineup, who, again, has had a modest contribution, when he's played a lot of minutes recently. But Derek Dixon has much more long-term upside and a much more higher ceiling than Kyan Evans does as a starter. Derek Dixon offensively during this stretch for North Carolina in the last two games where he's been a starter has scored a combined 25 points. He's a big-time shot maker. He's somebody that has good size for the point guard spot. And I'm always somebody who's been an advocate of three-guard lineups over bigger lineups in college basketball. Rhythm, chemistry, flow is always better when you have three-guard lineups. So I feel like North Carolina now, from a role allocation perspective, from a chemistry perspective, from a rhythm perspective, has a situation with Dixon, Young, and Trimble where it's going to have that on the perimeter. And then obviously you've got the best 4 or 5 in college basketball with Caleb Wilson and Henry Vessar up front. And one thing that you're seeing now out of Caleb Wilson, and I was watching the game last night against Notre Dame, and Notre Dame's not projected to be an NCAA tournament team by any stretch of the imagination, but Notre Dame is a capable team with a really good coach in Micah Shrewsbury. North Carolina was better defensively, but the thing I took away from the game, how good of a passer Caleb Wilson is. Early in the season, we talked about his accuracy on offense. We talked about his ability, obviously, on the glass. We talked about how his wiry body looks like he's really a clone of Marvin Williams, who was a big part of the 2005 national championship team for North Carolina. But the most underrated thing that Caleb Wilson does is pass the basketball. 9 assists in his last 2 games. And he is going to have to be on the level that he needs to be at if North Carolina is going to have a chance to beat Virginia on Saturday afternoon. It's one of the games this weekend that I'm looking forward to the most, because we have seen now North Carolina give us some really good moments, and the last couple of weeks they've given us some really alarming moments, giving up 95 plus at SMU, losing to Stanford and Cal on the road. This is North Carolina. And look, Hubert Davis is in year 5. Hubert Davis has been the head coach for 4 seasons at North Carolina. Year 1, national championship game loss to Kansas. Year 2, preseason number 1, missed the NCAA tournament. Year 3, 1 seed in the NCAA tournament, lose a heartbreaker in the Sweet 16 to Alabama. Year 4, limp into the NCAA tournament, lose to Ole Miss in the first round of the NCAA tournament in the round of 64. This is a pivotal couple of months here for Hubert Davis. And it's a pivotal couple of months for North Carolina. But here's what I'm going to tell you. This is all coming out in the wash in the near future, starting with Saturday against Virginia. North Carolina is 15-4 and 3-3 in ACC play. That means there's 12 regular season games remaining for North Carolina. I went over the schedule before I got on the air. 8 of those 11 games remaining for North Carolina are against teams that I currently project to be in the NCAA tournament. Because the thing now that's different about being a team in the ACC is this. You are not going to have cupcakes after cupcakes. You are not just going to have landmines that you have to navigate where the win really doesn't do much for you, but the loss is going to hurt you. No, these are real teams. And I think firmly right now, this is a poker game, and I'm shoving all my chips to the middle of the table. The ACC in 2026 will double its representation in the NCAA tournament from a year. That means that the ACC will have at least 8 teams, hear their names called, on Selection Sunday. And the ironic thing to me is this, and I was thinking about it last night as well. I was watching the end of the Virginia Tech-Syracuse game. I talked a couple of weeks ago on this show about how many programs in college basketball are still operating as blue bloods. Obviously, Duke, Kentucky, UConn for sure. But there are also other programs below that level that have fallen off and haven't shown this season that much reason for hope. One of them is Syracuse. Syracuse has not been in contention for an NCAA tournament berth this season from what I've projected. Syracuse has not been in the NCAA tournament since 2021. And if you really want to do a deep dive and you really want to look at things big picture when it comes to Syracuse, Syracuse just hasn't been the same program since it left the old Big East for the ACC. Now, the first year Syracuse was in the ACC was 13-14, and Syracuse, with a roster that was recruited to the old Big East, was a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament. But the big runs that Syracuse has had in the NCAA tournament, and this is obviously when Jim Boeheim was coaching, 2016 Final Four, 2018 Sweet 16, 2021 Sweet 16, all 3 of those runs came as double-digit seeds in the NCAA tournament. Who's Syracuse's biggest rival? Georgetown. Georgetown, I thought, would be much further along in year 3 under Ed Cooley. Won a game early in the season at Maryland, and Maryland's obviously not great this year, transitioning under Buzz Williams. Won a game at home early in the season against Clemson. I thought Georgetown was going to be more of a factor in the Big East. Georgetown is really struggling. Georgetown is battling for relevance in year 3 under Ed Cooley. And here's one thing I've thought about watching Georgetown games this season at home where they have been exceptionally underwhelming. Is it time for Georgetown's administration to start thinking about putting a smaller venue on its campus rather than playing all those games in downtown Washington, D.C.? Because it's a lot to ask for a program to draw at a high enough level when they are being asked to fill an NBA caliber arena. Look at what's happened with St. John's and Rick Pitino. The reason why St. John's is able to put enough seats to make it monetarily worth the school's while at Madison Square Garden is because Rick Pitino is the head coach and St. John's is nationally relevant. St. John's wasn't doing this before Rick Pitino got there, making this type of a commitment to play at Madison Square Garden. It was playing at Carnesec Arena. Villanova has Finneran Pavilion, thanks to Jay Wright, but Villanova also always had the pavilion on campus. UConn has Gamble Pavilion. Xavier has the Cintas Center. There are a number of programs in the Big East that have a smaller, more manageable venue on their campus. I wonder if it's time for Georgetown to start thinking about that. Because what's happening right now is not benefiting Georgetown in terms of the home court advantage it needs to really turn a corner in the Big East. And you want to hear something sobering about Georgetown the last decade? Georgetown has not gotten an at-large berth to the NCAA tournament since 2015. And Georgetown has not been to the second weekend of the NCAA tournament since John Thompson III and my buddy Roy Hibbert went to the Final Four in 2007. That's 19 years ago. Want to get your comments when we return? I want you to get in the live chat. Give me a comment. I'm also going to give you my weekly Rothstein rankings. Who are the leaders right now in the National Coach of the Year race? John Rothstein here on Inside College Basketball Now.
The new era of UFC on Paramount Plus comes out swinging. Yes. Show-stopping highlight machine Justin Gaethje collides with Liverpool phenom Paddy Pimblett in a must-see main event for the interim lightweight belt.
This is how I get down.
And Hall of Famer Amanda Nunes returns.
She's the best ever.
To take on bantamweight champion Kayla Harrison in the biggest women's title fight of all time. UFC 324, Saturday, January 24th, only on Paramount Plus.
All right, John Rothstein back here on Inside College Basketball Now. I want to remind you to subscribe to Inside College Basketball Now on both Apple and Spotify. We want to be your Bible for the college basketball season and beyond. We are the only college basketball podcast coming to you 52 weeks out of the calendar year. Also want to remind you to like and subscribe to Inside College Basketball Now on YouTube. Want to get up to 400 likes for this show. And also a programming note, Inside College Basketball Now will bring you live shows every Monday and Thursday at 1 o'clock Eastern during the 25-26 college basketball season. And if you can't get with us live at 1 o'clock, make us a part of your afternoon commute or during your early morning workout on both Apple and Spotify. We need an army with us for each and every show here on Inside College Basketball Now, and we need you to be all you can be. And also a reminder that Inside College Basketball Now will be bringing you exclusive interviews throughout the week with some of the biggest and best names in the sport. But as always, let's get into my weekly Rothstein rankings, and this is going to be our National Coach of the Year race. I'm giving you my top 5 candidates right now for National Coach of the Year. Obviously, Fred Hoiberg is going to be the favorite from Nebraska in the 1 spot. What's going on in Nebraska right now has never happened before. Nebraska has never been better than a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament. Nebraska now projected, according to me, to be a 1 seed in March Madness, but obviously a long way to go. Number 2 is Tommy Lloyd at Arizona. I think Tommy Lloyd has crafted what feels to me like the perfect roster in this landscape, an 8-man rotation, 7 players averaging close to double figures, nobody averaging more than 15 points per game. Arizona, as of today, the number 1 overall seed projected in the NCAA tournament. 3, I'm going with Dan Hurley, who again continues to churn out great teams at UConn. And the only loss, again, for UConn this season is against Arizona. But Braylon Mullins and Tarris Reed, 2 starters, did not play in that game for the Huskies. And Dan Hurley and UConn are chasing something historical this season. The chance to win 3 national titles in 4 years. And remember this, only 2 coaches in the history of college basketball have won 3 national titles in a 4-year span. John Wooden and Adolph Rupp. The coaches that Dan Hurley would join in the group of coaches that have won 3 or more national titles: John Wooden, Adolph Rupp, Mike Krzyzewski, Bob Knight, Jim Calhoun, Roy Williams. That's pretty special stuff. Dusty May at Michigan in the 4 spot. I've talked a lot about the importance of roster composition. Dusty May has done that at an extremely, extremely high level for the Wolverines. He's in the 4 spot. And number 5, Travis Steele at Miami of Ohio. Miami of Ohio, for really the last 27 years, was known as the alma mater of Wally Zerbiak, for better or worse. But this program is back in a major way. And the 20-0 start for Miami is the best in MAC conference history. Let's get in the chat right now and see, obviously, what you got on your mind. Riggs wants to know, John, who is the best team in the SEC right now, Arkansas or Florida? Arkansas, to me, on a neutral court, might be the most dangerous because of Darius Acuff, but Florida, to me, with the way that it's playing, looks like it's the best team in the SEC as of right now. Let's see. TJ98ERI, buddy, says, why was Mick Cronin so mad after a huge win? You know, sometimes people do things habitually because it's just all that they know. Mick Cronin is somebody who his entire life has been an underdog. He's somebody, obviously, that started out for Bob Huggins in a video role, worked his way up to be the top recruiter at Cincinnati, then went to Louisville to work for Rick Pitino, took over a Murray State program, won there, went to Cincinnati in 2006 after the program was really taken to the basement of college basketball, built it back up, built one of the most consistent programs in the sport, then went to UCLA. Fighters always fight. And Mick Cronin, who, again, has been on this show, will tell you that even if he coaches a team one day that goes 40-0 and wins a national championship, he's still going to be annoyed about something. It's who he is. It's what has gotten him to this point. Dan from Queens 659 says, John, Nebraska 1 seed, they won't make it past the Sweet 16. Well, that might be true, but that has nothing to do with whether or not Nebraska deserves a 1 seed as of today in the NCAA tournament. It's two separate things. But last week, I talked to an associate head coach of a Big Ten school who played Nebraska, and he told me Nebraska is a Sweet 16 team. Nebraska's chemistry, experience, all the above is putting them on a different level against competition. Let's see what else we got here. TJ980i, Kentucky has not had as bad of a season as people think. When you take into account that Kentucky has lost Jalen Lowe for the season, Kentucky has not really had Jaden Quaintance, and they've only had a couple of games with everybody together. I agree with you. But Kentucky has put together a pretty good 4-game stretch right here, 4-game winning streak. And a big reason why is Denzel Aberdeen. With Jalen Lowe now out for Kentucky, Aberdeen has become the go-to scorer in Kentucky's backcourt. And look, Kentucky's playing good hoop right now. Kentucky has a game on Saturday at Ole Miss that it has to get in order to keep pace, because after that, Kentucky is going to have road games at Vanderbilt, who has fallen off a little bit, and at Arkansas. So Kentucky's got to get Saturday at Ole Miss. Want to get now into some news and notes from around the world of college basketball. We're going to start with 3 good nuggets. Nugget number 1, wounded Illini. Brad Underwood announced this week that Illinois' Kylan Boswell is going to miss probably the next month with a hand injury. This is a huge, huge loss for Illinois. Boswell is one of the best perimeter defenders in all of college basketball and an all Big Ten caliber player. Nugget number 2, all in the family. Rick Pitino will go for his 900th collegiate head coaching win this weekend. Who is Rick Pitino going to play in that game? Xavier, who is coached by Richard Pitino. Can't wait to see that game. Nugget number 3, Boyd's boldness. Wisconsin is on a 4-game winning streak. Wisconsin will play at Penn State tonight in State College. During that 4-game winning streak, Nick Boyd, who has previously the last couple of years played on NCAA tournament teams at San Diego State and Florida Atlantic, is averaging 21.3 points per game. That backcourt combination of Boyd and John Blackwell is a potent one for Greg Gard. And here's something I've really been frustrated with. Tonight, we have one power conference game, Wisconsin to Penn State. It feels like we've had 25 on Tuesday and Wednesday, power conference games. Many of them in the same time slot. College basketball is better when big games feel like big games and they are not competing with other big games. Schedule makers have to be better across the board. I love watching non-power conference basketball. I'm up late every Thursday watching the Big West. I love that league. But with that said, we need to spread things out more across the board in order to fully magnify our sport. I remember being at a West Virginia practice years ago, talking to Bob Huggins, and him talking about part of the reason why the NBA is so successful is because they stagger the tips of their big games so nobody is competing with each other. We need to do more of that in college basketball. Let's get some games to watch right now. 5 games to watch. First one on Friday, Michigan hosts Ohio State. The rest of these are on Saturday. Villanova at UConn, Carolina at Virginia. We've talked about that. Illinois at Purdue. And then a big one Saturday night is Houston travels to Texas Tech. 5 under-the-radar games. Georgia is at Texas. Iowa State is at Oklahoma State. That's a big game for Steve Lutz's squad. St. John's at Xavier. Kansas at Kansas State. Then on Sunday, USC is at Wisconsin. I have no idea why the people in Madison scheduled the game on Sunday between USC and Wisconsin at 4 o'clock Eastern. Here's a public service announcement. Change the tip time. Move it to noon Eastern. I live with somebody, my wife, who is a lifelong New England Patriots fan. I know that's going to have to be on the main TV Sunday afternoon, and I'm going to have to stream USC Wisconsin. But you are doing your fan base and you are doing the product of your program a major disservice if you decide to schedule against the AFC and NFC championship games. And the only reason why I know that is because I live with somebody that's a New England Patriots fan. Want to remind you to subscribe to Inside College Basketball Now on both Apple and Spotify. We want to be your Bible for the college basketball season and beyond. We're the only college basketball podcast coming to you 52 weeks out of the calendar year. And also want to remind you that Inside College Basketball Now will be bringing you additional episodes in addition to live Mondays and Thursdays at 1 o'clock Eastern. Additional episodes of some of the biggest and best names in the sport. I'm John Rothstein, and this was Inside College Basketball Now.